Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the Nvidia earnings call. And in this video, I'm just going to get you guys prepared for what could likely happen with cryptocurrency and the markets across the board. It is the most anticipated news earnings that we have got this year because this is going to dictate whether or not this bull run that everyone is talking about is going to sustain itself. Things that we are going to be taking into consideration are the impact that China has had in regards to them preventing Nvidia from selling certain computer stock, chips, you name it. And of course, the tariff story on top of that. So we're going to break it all down and get you guys prepared for what is likely to happen. So if you are new, welcome to Traders Reality. Let's have a conversation. I got to stop that. All right, so firstly, let's just check out exactly what's going on. Bitcoin in the left, Ethereum in the middle, Solana just absolutely ripping it apart. And of course, the NASDAQ on the far right as well. So just to quickly break it all down for you guys, this is where I am with my trade so far. So we're doing all right. I mean, Ethereum has just been a pain in the backside, but we're sort of 12 and a half, nearly $13,000 on the day, which is okay. XRP, look at that, man. XRP actually making me money. For God's sake. Anyways, as it stands right now, we've got a relatively good, decent open right there on Bitcoin, which in principle was the idea of Bitcoin doing the rise, the retrace, the continuation to the upside. We had this move covered earlier on today with the Platinum members. So if you want to check that out, this is the sort of thing that you're going to get. So I was looking for Bitcoin right here inside of this range. I'd opened the trade already in the morning before the actual update. I said to the guys, just make sure you're waiting for Bitcoin to break the midpoint of the Asian session, rise, retrace into that continuation to the upside. I mean, logic says that these are the targets that I want to see Bitcoin taking. Of course, we've got the volatility happening later on this evening, so maybe that's going to be the case. But so far, so good. Bitcoin seems to be sticking to the narrative. You can see it broke that Asian session midpoint right there. Let me just expand this out for you. So yeah, you can see they broke the Asian session midpoint. That would have been a valid entry, very minimal drawdown, and you would have been off with the races for some nice movement to the upside to see Bitcoin try and sweep out, which is what I want to see it do, take out the New York high from from Monday's session. It's very important that Bitcoin does stay above this Asian session range right here, because without that, that's going to tell us effectively if they are favoring lower prices or they're going to buck the trend and completely rip everything up to the upside. Okay. Equally, on top of that, we also had the idea of Euro. Euro's done great so far, so good. We wanted to capture some longs on Euro from the bottom side of this range right here. Don't know why it's taking absolutely forever to do it. There we go. So yeah, we were looking for Euro to make a move up to break the midpoint of the Asian session. Very important range. You can see that they had swept the Asian session low, and the red vector candle down there was not able to sustain itself. So that meant that there could be a possibility that they are looking to bid Euro to then effectively make the reversal back up. Going into Euro, you can see today she has actually done very, very well to initiate a reversal from that point. So we managed to capture that. I wanted to see Euro make a little bit more further movement to the upside. But of course, from that, she did come down a little bit more, but then managed to make the reversal back up. Red vector candle recovery, which is what we wanted to see them try and do inside of this range. But you would have opened the trade at the break of the midpoint of the Asian session. And you can see if you took that trade right there at the midpoint break, you would have then seen a few pips profit on that logic. But my logic says that Euro is going to continue to the upside. So those guys that are currently playing that, get yourselves ready, because Euro is going to continue to move higher. Quickly going back into it. So as it stands, I do have the risk across Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, and XRP. I've also got the risk on the NASDAQ as well. So I'm currently in longs on the NASDAQ, and I'll just show you where I've done that. Here we go. So that's where I took my entry on the NASDAQ. There was a stop in volume candle that came into play, or the drop, retrace, continuation higher. I do expect NASDAQ to try and pull back down a little bit more, of course, in line with these earnings that are coming out very soon. But this is why I trade on BTCC, because I get the luxury of being able to trade the NASDAQ, which is the ticker Tech 100, and I can trade crypto at the same time. So if cryptocurrency isn't behaving itself, I can jump over to NASDAQ and I can exploit positions over there as well. I am tempted to try and take some trades on Nvidia, because you can actually trade Nvidia on here. Let me just bring that up for you. However, I don't want to run that risk, because Goldman Sachs and a couple of other banks are saying that Nvidia itself is probably subject, depending on the actual earnings call itself. If I bring that up for you right now, it says here, with a $4.4 trillion market capitalization, Nvidia has an 8.1% weighting in the S&P. That is wild. And it says here that Options traders are pricing in the idea of a 6% move up or down. Now, if we just look at the bigger picture of things with regards to it, we go over to Nvidia and you can see in this article over here that the issue that we've got is, of course, the story of China. It says here that report second quarter earnings expects 8 billion hit from China chip ban. That's a little bit of a problem for us. But what investors are looking for is the bigger picture. They want to know, how is Nvidia going to handle this hit on the 8 billion? But more importantly, where do they see the future of semiconductor chips and the relationships between China and the US, and how is that going to impact investors holding Nvidia stock? The question on everyone's mind is this: what's going to happen? Well, let me explain. Tonight at 10 p.m. UK time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard, the futures markets close to effectively reset. They are going to close for 1 hour. They will resume trading at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard, which is 11 p.m. UK time. Now, you won't be able to trade the NASDAQ during that time, but the NASDAQ, depending on the results of Nvidia, will either gap up or gap down. The only way that you can truly play this, but it's a bit of a risky one, and me telling you this, I have to just be very cautious with it, because you can make money with it, but I strongly recommend that you use very light size, because ultimately in the game of trading, you have to experience various ways of being able to adapt to certain environments. Let me explain. Say the NASDAQ today has been traveling upwards, okay? Then the news announcements comes out and then she gaps down. There's a huge gap in price, okay? Now, this means that NASDAQ's price at the opening of the futures will be trading down here, but there will be a gap. Now, what's the reason for the gap? Could be a number of things. First things first. If the news is good for Nvidia, then investors will want to bid side on Nvidia and buy as much of it as possible against the guys who are trying to sell it because they're happy with the result of their current positions, okay? That will lead to a gap down, depending on how many orders are hitting the marketplace. What if the news announcements is bad? Well, equally, that will lead to a gap down too. But then that could also trigger investors to step back in, all dependent on whether Nvidia say, one, that the earnings cap that they've got, or should I say the loss of 8 billion, hasn't really affected their revenues, or they say that in the future, everything's going to be okay in regards to the tariffs and the relationship with China is going to calm down and we're going to be able to sell our chip, then that's going to be welcomed by the marketplace. It basically means that when you get a gap down, there will be a window of opportunity for you to effectively trade back up into the gap. It's a risky environment, ladies and gentlemen. So if you do exploit it, given that NASDAQ moves so fast, you can exploit a nice little retrace, but it all relies on the idea of where Nvidia is at. So what are you looking for? You're looking for Nvidia to say, yeah, we took a hit on this, but if it wasn't for that, our expectation of earnings would have been X, Y, and Z. But the future looks great because we've got this new product coming out. This is coming out and this is making life a lot easier for us. So in terms of the earnings per share that a shareholder is going to hold, what information is Nvidia giving them to retain the stock? If anything, buy more of it. Okay, just to update you guys, I'm actually going to close off this risk right now because the market is just behaving a little bit erratic. I'm just leaving money on the table right now. So I'm going to be closing off these positions. Get rid. I don't have any interest. I did leave money on the table, but what can I say? This is the nature of the beast. So we're going to get rid of that. And I'm also going to get rid of my NASDAQ position as well. I said I was going to do that. That's no good to me. But anyways, that'll work out and regardless. So moving forward from that, closed off a little bit later than I should have. I should have closed it off earlier on. So effectively lost about $3,500 or even more than that on that position, but it's still an up day for me. So that's good news. Still trying to recuperate that loss from yesterday around 22K, but that's okay because we got the Asian session that we can trade into based on the news announcements. If the retrace that's happening right now is going to be deemed as the opportunity for the market to go bid side, then of course, when the news announcements come out, I'm going to be able to exploit the opportunity to try and see if I can get a good entrance. And then of course, if it's good news, price is going to then work in my favor to the upside. With that being said, just to break it all down for you guys, the daily time frame for Bitcoin is very important for us. Why? Because even though the news announcements is coming out, it can get a little bit tricky here. Bitcoin is still technically trading below the 5 and 13 EMA, and they have both crossed over the 50 EMA. That can give us an idea that the momentum is starting to shift to the downside. only the earnings will get Bitcoin above that point and continue further up. If we do get good earnings, Bitcoin in principle should be making a sharp move to the upside. So if you decide to start taking some risk in this range, please make sure it's light size, because like the options traders are predicting, either way, Nvidia is going to be moving 6% up or down. They're pricing in both events right now. So just make sure that you get the news that you see from Nvidia. If it's positive in the sense that, yes, they took a hit on their earnings per share, or anything regards to the story of China limiting their sales on certain chips, if investors are liking what Nvidia is saying in its earnings, they will put that into the charts and they will quickly try and buy up as much of it as possible. Remember, it could be a bid side event, which means that prices could actually come down before they actually shoot up. Let me quickly explain. Look at Bitcoin and Ethereum on this chart over here. You can see that Bitcoin on the right side over here has got some bids that are ready to get collected. You've got a bid side order here of 35 million at 110,811. Then you've got some more bids here, 4.6 million at 111,429. In other words, you've got bids that are preparing themselves for this big opportunity. So 110,333 is a big bid side. You've got another 35 million at 110,811. So that's telling me, again, there is an iceberg order that is being planted here. We've got another one here. There you go, 110,011. What the hell is that? So what is this guy doing? But anyway, nearly $90 million worth of Bitcoin in those ranges. So if Nvidia come out and it's not good news and the market tanks, investors will then price that in, the market drops, but then they'll go back to what is normal and what they're really looking forward to, the interest rate cuts. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please be safe, and I'll be tuning into you tomorrow where we'll see the madness unfold. Take care of yourselves, be bold, and sell XRP.